My name is Franka Ellman, but my maiden name is Heitmann, so I'm German, and I'm from Berlin. I'm 30 years old, and I've pretty much lived here all my life, except for 2 periods when I was a high school exchange student in the States, in Texas, and then during my undergrad and grad, I did an internship in New York for 1.5 years. But besides that, I've always been here, so I feel really, you know, I'm a native Berliner. I grew up in East Berlin in a typical like communist, those, you know, high rises. I mean, I guess they're not really high rises, but like, you know, the typical, like what you have in Prague and in Warsaw, like on the outskirts. And that's where I grew up. And I really, I don't think about it as much, but when I do, I realize more and more that that really wasn't a bad upbringing. Because my parents, especially my dad, he would always, you know, like ask my brother and me to like, oh God, was that really a good childhood you had there? And you know, like in this concrete world, like literally concrete and just, you know, no trees and everything just very new, but also very bland, no, you know, and like stimulation so much. And it's probably true from an adult perspective. But as a child, like looking back now, I mean, there were so many other children. There were playgrounds, and you just knew everyone in your block. So I don't think it was bad at all. It's just that, like, parents, you know, like they wanted to move to the suburbs. And my brother and I made sure that we didn't. I mean, this is like after the wall came down, but I'm saying it's like, because they thought they put us through such an ordeal by growing up in, you know, one of these gray buildings that all look alike, and we didn't really, I mean, we didn't want to leave because we had all our friends there. I had my own bedroom, which I didn't have before, and this was the whole government program that, you know, they set up these buildings and then erected all these new neighborhoods because the official government slogan was like 1 bedroom per person. And so, you know, that was great too. I mean, I didn't have to share a bedroom anymore with my brother, so sure, that was nice. I did have like a political consciousness, kind of. I mean, for like, you know, an 8-year-old. I feel like I knew a little more than maybe my friends or other people my age. But I think that's basically because the way my family was set up. My dad actually was born in West Germany, and then his family immigrated into the GDR in the mid-50s, which was pretty unusual because people would normally do it the other way around. So, but that also resulted in the fact that a lot of my relatives were in West Germany. And then my maternal grandmother, she actually immigrated from the GDR to West Germany in the early 80s. So I didn't really grow up with her either, because she was, you know, off to a different Germany and we couldn't really keep contact. We'd have to have like secret meetings in the Czech Republic. Then my dad in the summer of '89 or early fall of '89, when it was already almost kind of, you know, over anyway, they finally granted him permission to go see his relatives for the first time in like, you know, 3 decades basically. I definitely don't remember any like teachers being, so what does the clock look like on your TV? Because that's like how they apparently, a lot of, this is how you could find out if people were watching West German TV. Because you know, like right before the news, they show like a clock and it's ticking close to 8 o'clock, like for the 8 o'clock news. And I guess, I have no idea, like let's say the West German one was round and the East German television clock was square. I'm just making this up now. But you know, depending on what the kids would say, this is like, oh, so you watch, you know, West German TV. But I don't remember any of these comments, and I mean, we watched a lot of West German TV. I mean, there was only like 2 channels that we could get anyway. It's not like we had an abundance of like 200, you know, this is still the early stages of like private television. So I never got into trouble for that or anything, at least not knowingly, so maybe my parents did, but I doubt it. I definitely remember like us going, you know, being in our Trabi, like the East German car, and driving as close as we could to the Brandenburger Tor, just for like a tour of downtown and looking at the lights, but then also seeing that gate in the distance and, you know, knowing that something else was behind there. And I do remember feeling very joyful when the wall came down. So, you know, I did have that, it was like all over, which was great. And so even when I was 9 years old at the time, I just turned 9, and they would run all this footage on TV, right? I mean, of like the people in the embassy in Prague, you know, and when the Minister of State or Secretary of State made that comment, "You may all now," and then you don't even hear him anymore because they already know what he's about to say. So it's a very emotional moment, and then you see people, you know, like hammering on the wall and all that. And every time I see this footage, I mean, not just now, but even back then when it was still very close to my reality, like it already made me cry because I realized, oh my God, this is such a, you know, big moment. Berlin has no reason to really feel like a stepchild, or, you know, like, because there's always the, not comparison, but more rather like the dominance of other European cities, like Paris, like, you know, like people tend to go to Rome first before, like people don't really come to Berlin just to come to Berlin, they rather maybe combine it or something. But I think it's definitely worthwhile, like if you come from a very far away place, like let's say the States or South America, you know, Argentina or whatever, that you really do spend some time in Berlin and not just, you know, your 2-day weekend or skip it entirely, you know. I think it is in terms of also being like a gateway, you know, to the east. It's important to, like, I think it's a good place of transitioning maybe from like the Western perspective to more, even though, I mean, Berlin is still, I mean, obviously it's very Western European, but if you want to, you can still find these places, or you go to one of these museums or, you know, memorial sites, and you still get a different idea of what the Eastern experience or the communist experience was like. I'm sure there is certain truth to the whole, you know, that New York is, or Berlin is the New York of the 80s, or like what it used to be. And if you take it, for instance, from an artist's point of view, because it seems like, you know, this is like, now all the artists come to Berlin and live here because it's still very cheap. And that's going to change. I mean, it's already changing. But for right now, it's still one of the most affordable places, and one of the, you know, also most hip places, and things are going on here just as much as they do in Paris, London, and New York, but you can still sort of live here. Especially in our generation, in your generation, like people are really open, you know, and it seems like people want to, like, they do want to talk to you, or at least want to say, you know, hi, or, oh, you're from America, and then they can, you know, then you'll see it which way or which direction the conversation turns, but it can still, it seems like everyone's open enough, and Berlin has really changed in that regard. Like, it's definitely become more international, at least for our kind of, you know, age group. I think it has a lot to do with, you know, being able to travel cheaply, which already opens up everyone's horizon, because you can go different places more easily, and at least, even if it's just for a weekend or a week, you still have like that brief moment of, oh, this is something different. The internet probably too, you know, like giving you access to ideas or, you know, perspectives that you normally wouldn't have had. Yeah, I think that's kind of what it is. And this whole mobility amongst people in general. I mean, nowadays it seems like everyone has lived abroad, at least from, you know, a European middle class perspective. Like, if you go to university, of course you're going to spend a semester somewhere else. You know, it's like part of the requirements almost. And it's not, I mean, sure, it looks good on paper too, but I think in the end it also creates a different generation and like how they perceive each other, you know.